What are the top rogue Yu-Gi-Oh strategies? Post Infinite Forbidden. Big dog, I've been waiting on talking about Infinite Forbidden. We've been going over it for almost 2 months now. And today, I'm going to be giving you all of the information I know about this set. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Bang! All right, big dog. So the criteria for this tier list is incredibly simple. I will be ranking these strategies all the way from can challenge the top meta Yu-Gi-Oh decks in the game right now, all the way down to forbidden jutsu. Like, infinitely forbidden jutsu, big dog. Do not think that these decks will take on the top dogs. They fun though. And the biggest thing that I want to point out is that there may be a little overlap between this tier list and the last tier list I made last week. Some of these strategies may be included. Basically, when that happens, I'm going to be giving you updated advice based on extensive testing using Infinite Forbidden. And as normal, I've included strategies that you guys mentioned in the comment section. Don't think I ain't forgot about y'all. So let me know down below what are some strategies that I missed, and I'll be sure to try to include them in the next tier list. Let's go ahead and start off with Rescue Ace. I'm in danger. Somebody on my last tier list has asked me, has Rescue Ace fallen from grace from its once heights? The answer is yes. Because Rescue Ace Airlifter is at 1, the deck has a huge problem. It's not consistent enough to get into his Rescue Ace combos and must rely on Snake Eyes. Once you start incorporating Snake Eyes into Rescue Ace, it becomes, why not just play Snake Eyes? Overall though, as a rogue strategy, I don't think that the deck is terribly bad. With the correct pilot, you can do things with this deck. Keep in mind, Rescue Ace Turbulence still sets 4 cards to your side of the field, and that can be huge. Also remember, the less and less people are starting to play back row removal, I think the stronger that this deck is. Promethean Princess also offers a line where if you make SP Little Knight in Turbulence, your opponent can no longer preemptively hit your Rescue Ace Turbulence because you'll just summon it back with the Promethean Queen. So it's not necessarily a terrible deck, but does take a great pilot. Dinos, on the other hand, oh my God. Bro, you guys were asking me some of the toughest questions. My boy really put in the comment section, he's a Dino for lifer. Oh my God, for life? We both need help. I think before we address this conversation any further, that is one of the biggest hurdles for Dinos right now. Other strategies have their unaffected cards all the time. We have Misget 1. Now, Centurion did just get a huge boost with another level 4 tuner monster. My boy, I know you Centurion players, y'all living it right now. Especially seeing that Centurion Whitewoods is now going to be a thing with the introduction of that strategy as well. I think right now is the strongest time to play Centurion. This is the best strategy to be able to summon Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Calamity. But even if that now gets banned, it has other ways to pivot into some really powerful synchro monsters. I can see a world where Centurion is like Branded, but instead of the Gimmick puppet block, you just Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. And that's went pretty well for Branded, right? Unchained. Big dogs, there are 2 different types of Unchained players. There are players that like Unchained because they like the aesthetic, and then there are people that like Unchained because they like chains. I ain't even talking about these type of chains, big dog. They freaky. I think Unchained Shavara at 1 is one of the biggest prohibitors to Unchained as a pure strategy. But to be honest with you, Shavara probably should be at 1. And it's not because of Unchained, it's 100% because of Yubel. Overall though, I think that this strategy is solid. Unchained can be used as an engine for your strategy, or it can be used as pure. This is also one of those strategies that can take full advantage of the Fiendsmith engine. So do with that information as you please. I always thought that Unchained was a pretty cool deck, sometimes unhinged. But moving on to the other Fiend deck, Infernoid. Oh no, chat. Look guys, I am not always correct. I'm not omnipotent, but I do enough testing in this Yu-Gi-Oh game to give you some answers that are fairly accurate most of the time. I told you guys that Infernoids have a chance. It reminds me of when my family told me I had a chance at basketball. Not only can I not shoot, I am 6 feet tall. What basketball player did they see me in?
Phrasing?
I feel just like how my family lied to me. Infernoids also need to win the genetic lottery here. It's a deck that has a lot of the pieces to be a true disruptor in the meta. Any deck that's focused on the graveyard, you can get clapped up. But that does not justify playing 13 bricks inside of your deck, guys. And the brick cards are the Infernoids. Essentially, Yu-Gi-Oh has moved just a little too fast for this deck. Vanquish Soul. Vanquish Soul. Chat, they really got me out here feeling like a hamster because I'm out here killing my young. There are multiple things that can be true about Vanquish Soul. Vanquish Soul is a fairly complex deck that rewards you for good play. Winning with Vanquish Soul feels like beating Usain Bolt in a race, destroying Brock Lesnar in his prime at WWE, and running over Ray Lewis. 3 things that you never think would happen, but if you could do them, you might be him. And on the other side, Vanquish Soul is one of the most frustrating Yu-Gi-Oh decks to play because it feels like your opponent just has all of the answers. And it's simply because their deck does more for less. I'm gonna put this deck in needs help. I think one of the biggest things about Vanquish Soul is that if the deck had more consistent access to Raisin, and maybe even Vanquish Soul specific hand traps that recur themselves to the hand or activate when being revealed, would help the deck tremendously. But as of right now, this strategy is not spanking the top 5. It ain't even getting close. Now, on my last tier list, I put Sprite in mad potential. And the biggest reason is because, yes, it did win South American World Championship, but how would Sprite actually fare against some of the top decks in Infinite Forbidden? Overall, it actually doesn't do that bad. I think it's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Sprite was always a deck that was pretty good against hand traps, but being able to make Totally Awesome as your 3rd summon and then follow up with your Sprite combo means that you can go through most board breakers as well as hand traps too. I think one of the biggest problems with Sprite is going second, which means just don't lose the dice roll forehead and you'll be fine. But if you run a combination of board breakers and hand traps in Sprite yourself, you can be decently successful. Ice Barrier's pure. Holy! I think if we consistently played Gram, rest in peace, with Ice Barriers, we could win. Maybe, because she might be playing zombies. That's uncalled for. Rest in peace, Grandma. Hey, I ain't gonna lie, she cooking us right beside Kobe. An Ice Barrier player admitted that the pure version is bad, but if you use it as an engine, it would be better. I agree. That's why you play one of the Ice Barrier cards in Sprite. But one thing that we can say outside of Hopium is that Ice Barrier did get stronger. And that's all you can ask for sometimes. Salamangreat is one of those strategies that pops up, wins an event or tops, and then disappears. It is the literal Batman of fire Yu-Gi-Oh strategies. I think this is one of the decks that takes a really good pilot. Some of the biggest problems with Salamangreat as a avid Salamangreat player is extra deck space. A lot of times you do want to play the Pyro Phoenix line, which can wipe your opponent's entire board, but that's 2 slots where you have to sacrifice playing some of your other solid cards. Then there's a normal version that plays Salamangreat, Rage, and Roar, which are still really powerful cards till this day. I think regardless of how you play, not playing Reckless and playing around Nibiru is really important. And that's going to take a really good pilot, because sometimes you just be feeling reckless, my friend. Chimera. Now, Chimera got some support with Fiendsmith, and I think it's crazy. Chimera may be one of the most slept on best decks in the game right now. I almost feel bad putting it in the rogue tier list. Now that it has an access to an easier Beatrice the Eternal Lady with monsters that they can fuse with in case they're dead, Chimera can really be a reputable strategy that can go second and break boards or hand loop your opponent if they're playing too many hand traps. Red Dragon Archfiend. Yeah, that's me. That's me. Black Atlas. Or sometimes when I'm in the South, I'm Black Atlanta, if you know what I'm saying. I have to temper my expectations with Red Dragon Archfiend because there simply isn't enough competitive Yu-Gi-Oh players onto this deck. But I also think that Fiendsmith is really good for the strategy. If you lead off with Fiendsmith, you can actually cover a lot of your weaknesses. One of the biggest problems with this deck was Nibiru the Primal Being that no longer exists because you can make Wave King Caesar. It also serves as another form of interruption, and if you compare it alongside of a hot Red Dragon Archfiend and a Red Rain, I think that there's even less chances of you losing games. Unfortunately, you know, the Fiendsmith engine does put a lot of people out of price range for this deck for right now, but I think overall this deck is a solid, very, very solid choice. Red Dragon Archfiend is a structure deck that is aged like fine wine, while some of the other structure decks have pretty much crumbled. This deck has so much opportunity. All it takes is Black Atlas to ruin the scene or one of you guys to help me out with a top. I think it's really good though, and decently cheap if you already have this Fiendsmith engine. Now, Shining Sarcophagus, my updated thoughts on this deck, I don't think it's bad. I actually think that it's a lot better. Someone did mention that Branded Fusion is what makes this deck go, but who plays Branded Fusion in this deck? My boy, I'm trying to summon Sarcophagus monsters, make Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and win games. The deck can make Red Eyes Dark Dragoon without the need of Branded Fusion, and that's one of the best selling points of the deck. We don't have Baron de Fleur in the TCG anymore, so anytime we can get access to an Omni Negate, we probably should take advantage of it. And as you guys should already know, Gold Sarcophagus is a deck that's really good at going second and closing out games fairly fast. I think that this is a deck with the right hands can be able to compete. Raidraptors, my boys. Woo! Raidraptors is it's forbidden jutsu. The good thing about Raidraptors is that if you can combo, you almost guaranteed to win. The bad thing about Raidraptors is getting into your combo. It's just not possible. The deck is riddled with bricks and susceptible to the interrupts that are being played to this day. I don't think that this deck is terrible. It's probably the best forbidden jutsu deck that we putting out here, but it does have a lot of weaknesses that are currently being exploited. Same thing with Phantom Knights, my boy. I mean, it's just not strong enough. Chad, has your mom or your girlfriend ever bought you a jar or something and you're like, oh, I can do it, and you start to struggle with it? That's how Phantom Knights feel. Just not strong enough. Even with the horrors cards, the boards that this deck makes is so lackluster. I think one of the biggest things that needs to happen is a ban list, and that would change the complexities of this tier list, and I would be happy to make another one as soon as that happens. Because I genuinely think that this deck does have more potential than what I'm putting it right now, but for right now, for what it is, don't try. Now, White Woods has a litany of problems. I think one of those biggest things that I highlighted is its going second ability. Also, the need for specific cards for its combo does make it a little bit more vulnerable. Overall, though, I think when combined with Centurion or even played by itself, it's a solid choice at the very worst. I think one of the biggest things about this deck would be deck building for the TCG, figuring out the perfect recipe to be able to counter. We already have that with Centurion, but we don't have that just yet with White Woods. Once players figure that out, it's 100% a deck that probably can challenge, but at the very low, solid choice. In other words, I'm saying we need just a little bit more evidence to prove that this deck is a threat. Ragnaraika plants. Holy crap, they even got support. Yeah, I think that this is one of the more powerful decks. Ragnaraika is powerful because it takes advantage of its non-engine cards to be able to help it break a board. Playing a ton of hand traps, you can make room for it, but I think the best way to play this deck is with board breakers. And it only helps that this strategy is getting even more support with Ragnaraika's Tortoise Tyrant that helps you break boards by destroying spell and trap cards. There's also Ragnaraika Butterfly Lady, which allows you to draw up to 3 cards during the end of your turn. That's gotta feel good. I think that this is one of the better decks that with the proper play lines can easily challenge. Memento! Guys, look, I'm telling you right now, look, if you haven't jumped on the Memento train, you can right now. This deck's crazy. It has good board breaking capabilities, really good board making capabilities. This deck has everything you would want inside of a sleeper rogue strategy that probably should be on the meta tier list. It's crazy good with its 1 and 2 card combos, and it's really malleable, allowing you to be able to summon some pretty powerful boards that can finish the game very quickly. I also think that Valmonica got a huge boost, which is, this is kind of crazy. In the last tier list that I can recall, both Mementos and Valmonica, I was trashing on them both. I said that these strategies just simply were not good, and boy, how tides have turned. In a rogue tier list, I think that these are some of the stronger strategies to get support from Infinite Forbidden. And Valmonica actually has some really crazy combos. It looks bad on surface because it's a pendulum deck that requires counters, but in actual play, once you get used to the deck, you realize it's crazy good. My only problem, it ain't that amazing going second. Now for Madolche, and this one's tough. Madolche players are going to try to rip me to shreds, and that's why I consulted one of the most competitive Madolche players in the world before even adding this onto the tier list. Madolche's new support is crazy good. I love it. The new Link 3 monster shuffles a Madolche and then summons a Madolche? Bro, it triggers Ticket, Salon, adds to your hand with Chateau. That's crazy. The new Madolche Queen Tierra La Phrase allows you to be able to tiramisu your opponent, but on their turn, cooking. And Madolche Dessert can return a Madolche monster to your hand. I see what you're doing there. To get rid of an opponent's monster, then special summon a Madolche monster. These cards are crazy good. Unfortunately, the biggest problem with Madolche is that it's not enough. Madolche suffers from a huge problem that just simply has not been fixed. Despite it having a decent amount of shirts cards, its consistency has always been a question, and how much non-engine you can reliably play inside of your deck is also a huge point of contention. I want to put this higher. I really want to put this in solid choice, and a big reason is because of Herald of Orange Light. But I'm going to put it in Takes a Good Pilot because the deck is fairly complicated to play, despite looking like an easy to play Yu-Gi-Oh deck. And if we're being honest here, I think these two are incredibly good Yu-Gi-Oh decks that can go higher. Gimmick Puppet. Okay, so Gimmick Puppet has two sides. So on one side, people think Gimmick Puppet is so busted it should be banned. On the other side, Gimmick Puppet is not a great deck. I'm just gonna straight up tell you guys, Gimmick Puppet should be here. But because it has an FTK that can play around a lot of hand traps, it's going to be here. Gimmick Puppet is one of those strategies where if people don't prepare for it, then you win. But once players prepare for the strategy, it's cheeks. Regardless, it's not always going to be in the back of people's minds, so it's always going to be seen as some type of a threat. Exodia! Yeah, so the Exodia deck, it's fun. If you move around these letters right here and some of these letters, you get fun. I think Exodia being playable in 2024 should immediately put it in at least takes a good pilot, right? But unfortunately, all of the things that Exodia gets isn't still enough to compete right now, which is why I've been crying for a Forbidden List. Because under the right circumstances, Exodia could be here and some of these other strategies could also be changed around. But because we're in a hyper fast, powerful format, I don't think that it's worth playing. Unless you're doing the forbidden jutsu with it. Now, the Dark End archetype is also laughable. This isn't a deck just yet, but I think with the correct support, it'll develop along the way. Drytron also got some new cards that make it a lot better. Drytron in U2 allows you to be able to special summon this card and add a Drytron monster from your deck to your hand. It's also a level 1 monster, so it gets you into your combos a little better. Then the new Drytron Meteorus Alpha Draconids is a new ritual monster with 5,000 attack. It's actually harder to summon because it's stronger in attack. I think even with the new support, Drytron still needs help. I don't think that it's a terrible Yu-Gi-Oh deck, but I think that one of the support cards is crazy good. The other support card is playable, but the biggest problem with Drytron has never been the Drytron cards. It's been the ritual monsters that you summon with it. And currently right now, those ritual monsters aren't too strong. But that's all that I have for the Rogue tier list, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts about what do you love, what did you hate, and more importantly, which strategies that I missed. If you want to see more amazing TheCaliEffect content, be sure to check out these videos so I can catch you on the next one.